Our guest today is a writer, an activist, and a military veteran. She has worked as the press secretary for the Human Rights Campaign and the communications director for Catholics for Choice. Charlotte Clymer, thank you so much for joining me on the Suburban Women Problem.
Thank you, Rachel. It's good to be here. I am a big fan of you. Your Twitter game is fantastic, and I really appreciate your advocacy against the dissolution of democracy.
Yes, we could use more people to enlist in our fight, I think, always. So you enlisted in the Army in 2005 and then came out as transgender in 2017 through a series of really inspiring posts on Twitter. That's quite a journey. What has it been like?
It's been a whirlwind. When I came out as transgender, I honestly thought my career was probably over. I didn't think that there would be a space for a trans woman to do the kind of thing I wanted to do, which was political advocacy, run for office. And I was astonished at the overwhelmingly positive response, and not just from progressives. I had conservative folks in my life from church, from the military, reach out to me just to congratulate me and
Aw.
tell me they were there for me if I needed them. I think that this is an issue, trans rights specifically, that is far more complicated than most folks would have you believe.
Mhm.
There's a lot of common ground here.
I love that because even if someone doesn't understand something, it doesn't mean that they have to immediately hate it. And I love that people reached out to you, just offering support and maybe trying to understand. There's more that I don't understand that I do understand as I learn when I get older.
Hey, me too.
Coming out, coming out can be difficult no matter how you do it. But you decided to come out publicly on Twitter in front of the whole world, including all the trolls, and we all know about trolls.
Oh yeah.
Your post, it was beautiful. I just read it a couple of days ago in preparation for this interview, and it was everyone should read it.
Thank
How
you.
did you find the courage to do that?
I don't think it was courage. I think it was desperation. I reached a point in my life when I either thought, either I'm going to take my own life or I'm going to live it authentically. Because for so many years, for all my adult life, and certainly when I was a child, I would pray every day for God to take away this desire for me to be a woman. And it just never went away. And I did everything I was supposed to do. I played sports. I did well in school. I was very much a goody two shoes growing up. I joined the military. I did everything that I thought a young man is supposed to do in order to be, who they're supposed to be, and none of it worked. And it took me a very long time to realize that this is a gift from God. The ability to be in a position where you can see folks of different perspectives across gender lines. That's an enormous gift. Coming out was, I think, an acknowledgement of that gift and trying to embrace it instead of push it away as I had done all my life.
I love how you say that. I mean, it was
Thank
just
you.
either be your authentic self or you didn't think life was worth living. And I
Can I
think
tell you
all
what
of us.
courage is, though? Courage is you and your family standing so resolutely in the doorway against fascism. That is courage. You and your husband have been national heroes on a level that I don't think people really appreciate. And I know that we're not here to discuss that, but I really want to emphasize I would say the bravery that your family has shown in refusing to back down, refusing to compromise on very basic human rights, and certainly on our democratic values. And I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. That's so kind. That really is very touching. To that, I would say, I think we also feel like we don't have a choice, that this is the moment and this is where we are. So, I mean, we had a lot of plans. And now, we have to go with the moment that is right now and what is the best thing that we have to do in the situation we're in that we didn't create, but it is what it is. So I think this is our version of our, living our authentic life and being our authentic selves and doing anything else.
I have another question because I'm so curious about this. You went from, I mean, I grew up in a military community as a kid and I served in the military. We all know about the community of military spouses, regardless of gender. What was that kind of transition like from being a military spouse to suddenly being this national public figure?
Well, it's interesting because I kind of thought about it when I read your tweets, just like how your life can just change in a moment. It was really hard, but I think the best thing, and I would say this to anyone, is that you have to have a really solid idea of who you are. And um, if you do that, then you can say, I'm being true to myself, even if the trolls attack you, even if, they say hurtful things, you still know deep down who you are. And if you have a real sense of yourself, then I think that carries you through the scary times. So I'm sure that's something you can relate to as well, that
Oh, yes.
people probably totally questioned what you were doing, but you knew this was the way, this was the only way that you could really be a contributing member of society, and anything else would fall short of your expectations for yourself.
That's exactly right. That authenticity is so critical.
And you can see when people are not authentic, and it just
Doesn't it break your heart?
it does, because there are a lot of Republican leaders now, and I see them and I think, come on, like, it's
Mhm.
2022. Let's just go ahead and be our real selves. It's
That's
okay.
right.
It's not something that one particular gender or age group owns, but it is something that you can free yourself of at any time. Just release that and be who you are. And I think the great thing, there's a lot of bad about social media, but the great thing is you connect with people, which is kind of sometimes what we like try to do on the podcast, is give people, maybe they're in this really red place and we're trying to, give them that there's a community out there. Just keep fighting, keep doing, stand your ground, and we're going to help you, have these hard conversations. Because I think there's a lot of women who are probably listening right now who have never met a trans person in their life. And they just don't understand. I love what you said about people reaching out in your life and, saying they're going to support you and be with you, because undoubtedly many of those people did not understand.
Community is what transcends politics.
It
Uh,
does.
I think over the last few years, Texas, my home state of Texas, has been in the news for some not so good reasons. Texas is
Hmm.
probably going to be the case that it ends up overturning Roe v. Wade. The thing is, though, when I think of Texas, I think of Barbara Jordan. I think of Ann Richards. I think of Cecile Richards. I think of Wendy Davis and Julian Castro.
I'm from Oklahoma, so yes, I think of these people too. I mean, I know these characters. I know these women very well, and I think, what has happened to you? This is not your heritage. It is not who you were. Like, what is happening? It's so hard. One thing we've been talking about a lot on the podcast, and Suburban Women Problem and Red, White, and Blue have been working on is, a lot of the books that are getting banned right now. Books like Genderqueer and All Boys Aren't Blue. And the right wing has been trying to keep trans kids out of sports too. I mean, that's like their favorite hobby, I think. Why do you think they're so threatened? And
Mm.
especially by the trans community? I have my own theories, but I want to hear yours.
That's a big question, and I don't think it's any one reason, to be honest. I think a lot of it sure is discomfort and a lack of knowledge about trans
Mhm.
people. There are
Yeah.
Republicans who I meet who have never met a trans person before, and once they
Mhm.
understand that there's really not a whole lot of difference between us, at least when it comes to the humane aspects, the community aspects, their mindset has completely changed. I do think, however, that most of what we're seeing from politicians, elected officials, is purely a cynical attempt to weaponize trans issues in order to win elections. They don't really give a shit. Excuse me, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to cuss on here. They don't really give a damn about trans issues specifically, but they see this opportunistic pathway to exploit the trauma of trans children, exploit the discrimination against trans children to get voters to support them. And it's a terrible thing to watch.
It is. It's been tremendously successful, though. I mean, I've known people who, I mean, the locker room issue is like their number one voting issue. Forget abortion rights, forget,
Mm.
anything else. Like, who's going to be in my children or grandchildren's locker room is like the thing that keeps them awake at night.
And the reason it keeps them awake at night is because they have folks in their life who are not bringing them to a place of knowledge. If there are cis people who understand otherwise, there's an obligation on their part to make sure that they're educating the people in their lives who don't know a lot about trans issues. I can't get to these folks because I'm not close to them. But the folks who do have cis people in their lives, it is a public service. It is an advocacy to talk to your family, talk to your friends, and make sure they know that trans children do not pose a threat to their children. Trans children are completely validated by doctors, by medical professionals. There is absolutely nothing wrong with a trans child being affirmed and having civil rights.
It's a form of allyship, really. I mean, to educate people. And one of the great ways about that, I think that we can do it, and so getting back to the books, is I read a lot of books about subjects I know nothing about, just to gain more knowledge, which is kind of the point of reading. And
Right.
you can read about someone else's experience, particularly for children. For my daughter, then we have conversations in our home about it, and we can, it's a jumping off point. But I think some people are truly scared of those conversations because they have no knowledge at all, and it's just not talked about enough in society.
We live in a time of great uncertainty. It feels like 5 years from now, no one can predict what's going to happen. And when people feel uncertain, they tend to grasp to the things that have always felt stable. Gender, for better or worse, has always been, well, in the mainstream, has always been this stable component. And as people have rightly challenged that and said, actually, science is not so clear about this, and actually, sociology is not so clear about this, I think the folks who feel scared and feel uncertain about the world feel threatened when this thing that feels so consistent is suddenly thrown into, I would say, nuance, which is a good thing, but it feels intimidating. So our job is to make it a little less intimidating and to get folks to understand nothing has really changed here. These things have always been the same. The only difference now is that you're now aware of the truth and really the enormous diversity of sex and gender that's in humanity.
It was always there. You just didn't know about it. It's going to be okay.
That's right.
So, were there
That's
any
right.
books that you read when you were growing up that you saw yourself reflected in those books?
No, 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 not at all. Um, and that's the tragic thing. I would have come out so much sooner if I had been taught that my experience was not this weird thing that needed to be kept a very dark secret. There were no books, there were no TV shows. When I was a kid, the biggest LGBTQ thing that happened in my childhood was Ellen coming out. So imagine being in Central Texas and you're surrounded by Republicans and they all love Ellen. And Ellen comes out and suddenly it's this huge controversy. Now, it was good that Ellen came out and it was amazing, but in some ways it was also a signal to me that, oh, I better be very careful about who I let in on this secret because it might be dangerous to me to let people know that. And now we live in a time when trans kids can turn on a television or they can look at the New York Times bestseller list and they'll see Sarah McBride and Danica Carone and so many trans folks who have just exploded in the public eye. Laverne Cox, Janet Mock, uh, Chase Strangio, all these amazing trans people who are changing the world.
Mhm.
We didn't have that when we were kids. And so our job is to make sure that the 10-year-old trans girl who's in the closet right now can see a future that includes her and doesn't mean
Mhm.
that she has to be someone she's not.
As a mom, I mean, all I want is for my daughter to be able to be her authentic self, to never feel like she has to hide who she is from me or anyone. There have also been calls and successful, movements to ban Mouse, the graphic novel about the Holocaust. And last week, oh, your tweets, they really get to me. Last week, you posted just a really emotional and beautiful thread on Twitter about a man named Henry Greenbaum. at the DC Holocaust Museum. Could you tell us a little bit about that, about Henry and just about the thread? Because it was so touching.
Henry was one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met. And I've met a lot of people, and Henry just,
And you were
he
working
had
there. You were
this,
working at the Holocaust Museum.
yes,
Yeah, and he is.
that's right. It was my first day working at the Holocaust Museum. I just got out of the army. I was this kid from Texas, 26 years old, knew about Judaism, knew about the Holocaust, didn't know a lot about anti-Semitism. I had a lot
Hmm.
to learn. I got introduced to Henry on the first day, and just the extraordinary empathy he showed me in talking about his story. He didn't want anyone to feel ashamed. He wanted them, however, to be active in speaking out against hatred and knowing the causes that lead to hatred. Henry was the kind of human being that, first of all, you wish he were your grandfather. I really did wish he were my grandfather. But second of all, he's exactly the kind of spokesperson that you would imagine could educate humanity about the horror of our past. And he shouldn't have had to do that, but he did. He went into that museum every week, year after year, and he talked to complete strangers, some of them whom I'm sure were anti Semitic and hated Jewish people. And he changed hearts and minds just by the force of his kindness and his good humor and his honest retelling of his story. And he has been such an example to me. I've had some bad days, and I think, man, I really need to remember what Henry did.
Mm.
I need to get back to the basics. And the basics are this: you connect to people through commonalities, and you teach them that we really don't have that many differences between us. And it's
Hmm.
true. And the differences we do have between us are okay. That's what makes us unique.
Yeah.
But when we don't respect those differences, that's when trouble happens. And Henry was extraordinary at communicating that.
Oh, it's one of my basic uh, life lessons as an adult, is that people are more alike than they are different.
And can I point out real quick, Rachel, because I'm so glad you brought this up. It really breaks my heart when people feel intimidated from learning about other cultures or other communities. Uh, as a trans person, when I hear that a cisgender person is afraid to learn more about trans people because they don't want to mess up, they don't want to make mistakes. Mistakes are great. you know, that discomfort that you feel is a gift. That means that there's more you have to learn. As an activist, I have those moments all the time. I'm a white person. I'm a white person who's able-bodied. I'm not a religious minority. I'm a Christian. There are so many things that I don't know about other cultures. And so when there's a moment when I realize I don't know something, that is a really big gift to me. That means that, oh, this is great. This is an opportunity to fill out my knowledge that I didn't have before and make sure that I'm making life a little bit easier for others who don't share my experience.
So well said. But is there something that you wish our listeners understood about what it's like to be transgender, or is there a way that something you could specifically say that would tell us that we could be how we could be better allies?
You asked the perfect question. I love it because believe it or not, I do a lot of interviews and some people never ask that question. And it kind of makes me sad. Here's one of the biggest things. There is this perception that trans people just magically appeared over the past 5 to 10 years. Here's the reality. Trans people can be found in every culture, every country, every religion, every race, every ethnicity, all over the world for as long as there's been recorded human history. You go back to Native American tribes and find trans people. You can go back to ancient Greek society, ancient Roman society, African tribes. The only difference, as you so astutely pointed out earlier, is that we're just now more
Hmm.
visible, but we've always been here. And so, what I would love for folks to understand, and especially if you're a parent who's wondering whether or not your child is trans, just realize that your child is part of a long and proud history of people who have been authentic to themselves and who have fought for civil rights, who have fought for human rights, made advances in technology, who have been extraordinary creators and artists. So just don't feel ashamed. Don't feel like this is part of a new fad and your child is you know, seeing something on VH1, trying to emulate it. No, this is wonderful. It's part of a long human history.
Well, this has been
That's right.
lovely. Now we're going to do some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I love it.
Okay.
Yes.
Who is a trans trailblazer that you wish we all knew about?
Marsha P. Johnson. She was a black trans woman who was one of the first to throw a brick at the Stone riots that launched the modern LGBTQ movement.
What's your favorite clapback to use on trolls?
Sweetie.
Very Texas of you.
I love to call sweetie. I love to call condescending men sweetie because they don't get it, and once they do get it, they're like, "Oh, you're right. I have done that to women."
You're a proud Texan. I mean, not everyone's perfect, so I get it. But what is your favorite thing about Texas?
We have a proud progressive history. Uh,
That's true.
we do. Democrats,
Mhm.
progressives, the labor movement, the civil rights movement. So many great progressives that come out of Texas.
What's one thing you always have to have in your house?
Ice. I love water. I love water. I love ice water. If I don't have ice in my house, I get very cranky.
I really feel like that's a Texas thing
It
too, or
is.
at least kind of
It
a
is.
Southern thing. What do you do for self-care?
Okay, well, in the past I've joked about this. I've said I drink, which during the Trump years was certainly true. My biggest form of self-care is community. If listen, if you're a person who likes Twitter and Facebook and social media, I encourage you to get offline. Go hang out with your friends and family. That is going to be far healthier than spending hours and hours on Twitter and Facebook, doom scrolling and worrying about the future. Lean into the people who you love.
That is really sage advice. And as an aside, I was just reading in a book the importance of that, of having a real community, and seeing yourself through them, and just real people, having identity, based
People who love you will be the first to tell you when you're
on. Mhm.
messing up, when you need to change direction, just like Colonel Vindman did to Congress, right? I love this country, and it needs to
Yeah.
be, and it needs to
Mhm.
change.
No,
So
it's true. So, Red, Wine, and Blue just launched our Book Band Busters campaign to stand up for books. And what is your favorite book?
A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I read that my freshman year of high school. There were a lot of themes that I related to, but what I loved about it was that it was honest about poverty without, I would say, not offering a measure of hope to those who live through poverty. It's an extraordinary book. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn.
It is an extraordinary book. I agree. Well, with that, that is the end of our rapid fire questions. Where can people go to find out more about you and your work?
Well, I would be lying if I didn't talk about my blog. I would love for people to subscribe to my blog. It's Charlotte's Web Thoughts at Substack.com. Just type in charlotteclymer.substack.com. Subscribe. It's completely free. All you need is an email, and of course, folks can find me on Twitter at CMClymer.
It was such a joy and an honor to talk to you, Charlotte. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Ma'am, the honor is all mine, believe me. And there are millions of Americans who wish they were in this seat right now talking to you. So it's an honor.
Thank you.